Polls opening soon in Tunisia's presidential election, but with angst over a lack of public spending and economic woes, the turnout and the outcome are uncertain. Rising tensions in the Persian Gulf after drone attacks cut Saudi oil production in half. Yemen's Houthi rebels claim responsibility, but the U.S. points a finger at Iran. And Annie Silverstein's first feature film, Bull, wins a top prize at the Deauville Film Festival. It's a disturbing portrait of America under U.S. President Donald Trump. Ballot boxes and security personnel were deployed to polling stations across Tunisia. 24 candidates are running in today's presidential election. The country holding just its second free democratic poll since the 2011 revolution. And unlike the first one, this is unpredictable. Meanwhile, voting abroad got underway yesterday here in France. Monty Francis has more.
Tunisians lined up at this polling place on the outskirts of Paris on Saturday, casting votes for a new president, determined to make a difference.
I think it's important because it's a part of the democratic process in Tunisia. They've already had a few elections there, and through those elections, we'll be able to have a more mature democracy than before.
More than 1 million Tunisians live in Europe. An estimated 625,000 are in France, and a majority of them hold dual citizenship. Many young voters see this election as a chance for change.
The most important thing for us is to have a change. Each time we come to vote, it's because we hope to have something new for Tunisia, to have a new government, and to have younger people in government, to have a change in mentality and to have a future for our people.
It's a very, very important day for our country, for the future of Tunisia. And as a Tunisian woman, I'm proud to vote, to choose our future president.
Tunisians began immigrating to France in large numbers in the 1960s and 70s to escape bad economic conditions at home. Today, French Tunisians are not only watching, but voting, hoping to make a difference in the only democracy to emerge from the Arab Spring.
And today's poll in Tunisia comes amid frustration with politicians and the economy. France 24's Nadia Massey is covering the poll for us. She reports from the capital, Tunis.
9 years since the Arab Spring, Tunisia's third democratic election, and tentative signs here that things are slowly getting better.
For 18 years I lived in Canada. I came back after the revolution to help my country develop economically.
I hope that the president will rise to the challenge, cut the cost of living, and that the economy will improve. We have to go slowly.
Security and the economy are intertwined. One doesn't exist without the other. Without security, there will be no investment. So the most important thing is security. We need it to get the country unstuck.
But whether they vote or not, nostalgia is deep-seated here. We've heard from people harking back not just to pre-revolution Tunisia, but an era long before that.
And it's hard for these elections to be a success. The problem is that there is nobody like our first president, Bourguiba. If there was, I would vote for them, but there isn't.
This election is a crucial test for Tunisia's young democracy. Will the election be free and fair, even with one prominent candidate in prison? How well will the Islamists do? And crucially, can the eventual winner succeed where the previous government failed and lift this country's ailing economy?
Leaders in West Africa have pledged $1 billion to battle terrorism in the Sahel region. The joint fund will reinforce the military operations of all the nations involved. Axel Simon, Kelly Dusai, and Camille Nelek have more.
As West Africa faces increasing insecurity, the region's leaders want to crack down on terrorism in the Sahel, the top and only item on this summit's agenda.
The 15-member countries of the Economic Community of West African States were joined by Mauritania and Chad. And on the last day, the summit had reached two key agreements. First, to meet the cost of fighting terrorism, the launch of a 4-year financing plan.
We have decided to contribute up to $1 billion to finance joint forces and strengthen operational capacities and state information.
And the second, for G5 Sahel to continue to operate, putting to bed previous doubts over the future of the joint task force. Founded in 2014, it includes personnel from Mali, Mauritania, Chad, Niger, and Burkina Faso. The aim was to support regional armies and eventually replace the French military, which has so far led the fight against jihadists in the region. But its track record is mixed, and it hasn't completed any major military operations, despite the jihadist threat in the region increasing. In the past 4 years, ECOWAS says jihadists have killed over 11,000 people in 2,200 attacks. Burkina Faso, hosting the summit, is one of the hardest-hit countries. 30 of its citizens were killed in terror attacks in the past week alone.
Yemen's Houthi rebels have claimed responsibility for multiple drone attacks on 2 oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. The U.S. has blamed Iran, who backs the rebels. It's the third time in 5 months that Saudi facilities have been targeted, and the latest incident of the war in Yemen spilling over the border. Houthis are fighting against forces loyal to the Yemeni government, who are themselves backed by a Saudi-led coalition. Cole Stengler explains.
Saudi Arabia says it slashed oil production in half, or about 5% of the world's supply. An industry disrupted by Saturday's attacks, which targeted oil facilities like this one in Abqaid, one of the world's largest oil processing plants. Houthi rebels say they sent 10 drones to attack the site run by Saudi energy giant Aramco, as well as the state-owned company's second-largest oil field in Khurais. With smoke visible from space, they say it was the biggest operation they've carried out, one that struck deep inside Saudi territory.
This mission comes as part of our legitimate right to react to the aggression and blockade on our country for the past 5 years. We promised the Saudi regime that our coming operations will only grow wider and more painful as long as their aggression and blockade continue.
The Houthi rebels are backed by Saudi Arabia's regional rival, Iran, and since 2015, the kingdom has been leading a coalition to fight against them in Yemen. In a series of tweets, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo blamed Iran for the bombings, saying, quote, "There was no evidence the attacks came from Yemen." Iran has not yet commented. In recent months, the Houthis have stepped up their offensive, carrying out a series of drone and missile attacks on airports and oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. The country is the world's top crude oil exporter, and the United States has already said it's ready to deploy strategic reserves if global markets are disrupted. Saudi Arabia, for its part, says it's ready to respond to the attacks.
The White House announced that the son of Osama bin Laden is dead. Hamza bin Laden was killed in a U.S. counterterrorism operation in the Afghanistan-Pakistan region. A statement issued in President Donald Trump's name gave no further details, such as how or when. Some reports had said that Hamza bin Laden was killed earlier this summer. Others say in the past 18 months. He had become an increasingly prominent figure in al-Qaeda, responsible for planning and dealing with various terrorist groups. Well, days before Israel's longest-serving prime minister faces his biggest challenge in the polls in more than a decade, Benjamin Netanyahu got a boost from Donald Trump, who tweeted his support for moving forward with discussions on a mutual defense treaty. Netanyahu is perhaps Trump's closest ally on the world stage, and the U.S. president has expressed optimism that he will survive Tuesday's vote. Kedavin Gordestani reports from Washington.
The U.S. and Israel have already a very strong cooperation on military, $3.8 million that the Americans spend on military aid to Israel. They have a strong cooperation as far as military training, as well as sharing intelligence. But this would be a much bigger step. It would be, as it is called, a mutual defense treaty. That means that the U.S. could very well be forced to intervene to defend Israel in the event that Israel would be attacked. And given the situation in the region, it could mean that the U.S. would have to possibly strike back in the event of an attack by Hamas, or even in a confrontation with Iran if Iran were to threaten Israel directly. So it would be a huge step for the United States to have the possibility of intervening in Israel. And not everyone is actually happy about this possibility in Israel itself. Benny Gantz, one of the biggest rivals of Benjamin Netanyahu for the upcoming election, calling it a grave mistake which would threaten the military autonomy of Israel.
Tropical storm Umberto has left the Bahamas. It had dumped rain on parts of the archipelago's northwest region that were already hammered by Hurricane Dorian 2 weeks ago. The storm had originally threatened to exacerbate problems, but conditions have since improved. Shirley Sitbon has more.
Bahamians braced for the worst on Saturday. The country's northwestern islands, already shattered by Hurricane Dorian, were threatened by another storm, Humberto. Hours later, the tropical storm shifted away, passing about 100 kilometers north of the Great Abaco Island, dumping water but not causing more death and destruction. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres toured the devastated islands on Saturday, encouraging rescue workers to work full speed. Guterres said he had never seen that level of destruction.
The Hurricane Dorian has been classified as Category 5. I think he is Category Hell.
The Bahamas are still searching for the missing. They need aid for those who have lost everything they had. For that, they need funding. But Guterres said time has come to look beyond rescue and reconstruction.
First is that we need to stop climate change. We need to make sure that we reverse the present trend where climate change is running faster than what we are.
The UN says storms have multiplied and they're more powerful due to climate change. The international body's belief is that hurricanes will become even more destructive in coming years.
The Deauville Film Festival, a celebration of American cinema in France, awarded its top prize to the movie Bull. It's Annie Silverstein's first full-length feature. This year was the 45th edition of the festival, with Catherine Deneuve presiding over the jury. A total of 14 films were in competition, 6 directed by women. Pierre Delrue has more.
Pierce Brosnan, Gina Davis, Johnny Depp and Sienna Miller. For almost half a century, the Deauville Film Festival has been celebrating independent films, cherished by some of the great names of American cinema.
Oh, I think it's the deep respect that they have for filmmakers and the appreciation of filmmakers, writers, producers. It has an intimacy which is its own unique romantic flavor.
This year, a total of 14 films were in competition, but the big winner with 3 awards, Annie Silverstein's Bull, which received the top prize, the festival's Critics Award, and the Revelation Prize.
Such an honor. We're flattered, and we just want to thank you for supporting independent cinema from across the country and our story. Thank you so much.
Silverstein's first full-length film paints a troubling portrait of Trump's America today.
There are a lot of things in Bull. It's a very rich film. That's why she won the grand prize and why all 3 juries gave her an award. A lot of things are unspoken but are felt, and we're left with a very troubling image of America.
2 films were awarded the second prize jury award, Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse and The Climb by Michelangelo Covino, an edgy comedy featuring 2 real-life friends.
I think this is more a story about friendship.
It's like a love story without sex, basically.
and then in the sequel we have sex. So.
The awards wrap up a week of festival, which will officially end on Sunday with public screenings of the 14 films in competition.
That's it for this edition. Thanks for watching, and please stay tuned to France 24.